right. We'll find out in just a minute. And now, Leo, Gordon, I want to introduce you to Steve Bible, N7HPR. Steve's in the Phoenix area, and let's see if we can bring him up on Skype. Hello, Steve. Do you copy?
Well, there we are.
Hey, hi, Steve.
Hi, guys. Hey, Gary, how many transistors in that ICOM?
There are more than 10.
Hundreds, I'm sure.
I think that should be the stumper question. Is
well, Ray's out there.
How many transistors are inside that?
Do you include
Ray
CPUs?
Ray Novak is out there in the chat room.
Sure.
Okay,
sure.
now I'll say hi to Ray. Hope things are going well. Hope to see him soon.
So we're going to talk about the ARISS program and the satellite that's up there right now, the ARISSat-1, in just a second. But I want to introduce you a little bit more, or let you introduce yourself. Tell people a little bit about who you are and how long you've been a ham, and maybe what you do for business and stuff. Because what I wanted to do was introduce people in a little bit broader context than just ham radio. So because we're hams here on the show, but we're more than that. So a little bit about Steve Bible.
Okay, so yes, I'm a ham, and yes, this is my shack here.
It's like
let's see.
Bookstore.
Yeah, it's just gonna. Well, that's just half of it. Gosh, there's so much to say. I'm just trying to keep it,
when did you get your license?
Okay, so I got my license in 1985, so I've been a ham now for a little over 25 years. Definitely was really interested even when I was a kid in grade school. We had an English teacher that we had to get up in front of the class and do our different talks, and we got to choose whatever talk we wanted. So I was talking about electronics, and this is all the way back in 7th and 8th grade. And so it turned out the English teacher was a ham, so he took me under his wing and after class and taught me the Morse code. But as it is, when you're a young kid and it's hard to concentrate, especially back then, as difficult as the exam was. And of course, living in Phoenix, the FCC didn't come here until every 6 months. And that was to go downtown and to take the exam. So it waned until I was in my 20s before I got my ham license, but it was definitely a seed that was put in me in a very early age.
And what do you do for a living? What's your, you're in technology someplace, I know, but I'm not sure quite where.
Okay, so what am I doing today? Well, for the past 11 years, I've been an applications engineer at Microchip Technology. So a lot of people might be familiar with Microchip. They're the ones who make the PIC microcontrollers. Maybe a lot of the hams out there have done projects using with the PICs. There's been several articles in QST and QEX even about how to use the PIC microcontrollers. They're really not very hard to use at all in ham projects, and a lot of people find them very easy to pick up on and add them and make their projects even smarter. In fact, those Elecraft radios, so here's a stumper question for you. How many PIC microcontrollers inside an Elecraft? And you can choose which one, the K1, the K2, or the K3.
Well, I would have to say there's probably a bunch. Yeah. Anyway, how about telling us about the ARISS program? I can't wait to hear more about it, and I think we've got some great pictures to go along with it. Go ahead.
Okay. The ARISS program is amateur radio on the International Space Station. So what maybe a lot of hams may know, or perhaps those that are watching the program may not know, is that there's an amateur radio station on the International Space Station. It's the first one is part of the Russian segment, and there's a second one now that's part of the European segment. So way back when the International Space Station got started, we put together an amateur radio station, which consists of a handheld radio, and also there's a packet up there. ARISS also went on to do satellites, and one of the first of those satellites was SUITSat-1, which was launched in February of 2006, and I think we've got a slide for that one. And there it is. And you can see on the right, there's SUTSAT-1. It's a Russian Orlan spacesuit, and this is the real SUTSAT-1. This is a photograph taken from the International Space Station with it all assembled, ready before it was deployed. And you can see on the top of the helmet, there's a little switch box, and you see the antennas that are kind of folded back on it. And what we did is we created the electronics that went inside and also the switch box and antennas that went on the helmet and made it into a satellite. And the picture you see on the left, that is actually the suit out in orbit. Now, there was no solar panels on SUTSAT-1. It just operated on batteries and lasted for about 2 weeks, and it was nothing short of a phenomenon. The idea of putting electronics and making a spacesuit into a satellite was just too good to be true. There was just people all around the world were just fascinated by it and had the opportunity to listen to it. I'd say it was unequivocally a success, especially from the phenomenon point of view. From an operational point of view, it had a little bit of problems with the antennas and thus was not able to be heard on the ground with very simple handheld radios as we really intended it to be. So once it was discovered that the antennas weren't working quite right, then the guys then basically went into the attic and dusted off those Yagi antennas and pointed them up at the sky, and were able to hear it. Now, I had a couple of URLs at the bottom of that slide, and probably the best one is AJ3U's blog there, that middle URL.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, AJ did a wonderful job. He basically collected everybody's audio recordings and their signal reports, and if you go to that blog, you'll start at the bottom and work your way up to the top. You'll get the whole chronology of SUTSAT-1. Yep, there you go. And it's just, this is very well done. And we had a lot of fun doing SUTSAT-1. And we wanted to do SUTSAT-2, and we wanted to do it better. We wanted to, let's go back to SUTSAT-1. Basically, the electronics in it was a simple radio transmit only. It was a receive only satellite. And we had basically FM. And it was audio greetings from space that we had recorded from children from all around the world. And that's what you got to listen to. And the telemetry was spoken, which also meant that, you know, a lot of the amateur satellites, the telemetry ends up being...
Are they speaking Russian?
Well, that one is a Russian greetings, and that's from, if you listen, there's a Russian one in Russian, and there's another Russian one that's in English. So they were basically, the Russians love commemorating events, and that, I forget which one the event that was.
This is the telemetry
there's
you were
also
talking
the
about.
Children. Yeah, and then you'll hear the telemetry, spoken telemetry. The nice thing about that is you didn't have to have anything very sophisticated in listening to it, and that was our intent from the very beginning. Of course, we certainly would have loved for it to last longer, but not having got my tongues twisted there. We had a very short time of getting the electronics put together, so we didn't have the ability to put anything more sophisticated in it.
It was designed
that's
to be a
pretty
first
neat.
try.
Now, tell us about the new one. The one I just heard a couple of days ago.
Oh, good. I'm glad you heard it. I want everybody to go outside right now.
No, not right now.
Well, you're going to have to sit there and take a look and do the past prediction so that you know when it's going to come by. But when it does, then jump outside and point your antennas at the sky and have everybody wonder what the heck you're doing.
So these are these old, unused suits that they're just kind of tossing out? Is that the idea?
In a way, it is. What's interesting is the Russian philosophy with their spacesuits is that they discard them after, let's see, it's 5 years or 12 wearings.
Huh.
Whichever comes first.
That's pretty quick, really.
Yeah, it is. And now the NASA philosophy, what's interesting about that is I'm sure they have a certain amount of wearings, and then they bring them back and refurbish them. So it's interesting now that you see the U.S. and the Russian space programs working together to see the two different philosophies.
Yeah.
So what it was is Sergei Sambarov who is one of the members of ARISS, ARISS being the international community of people that basically care and feed for the amateur radio part of the International Space Station.
They just have me shut down.
Oops, sorry about that. We've got a little Gary crosstalk coming.
Gary, we're just trying to work around you there.
Yeah, I'm back. Had a lightning hit.
Is that what happened? We thought you sat on your mute button.
No, lightning hit. It knocked off my mixer, but I got it booted up again.
Holy cow! So you're in the middle of a lightning storm right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're brave.
You know, they say it's 5 o'clock somewhere, but I guess then there's also lightning somewhere as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry.
So where
go ahead.
I was trying to remember.
How about the new one? No, we heard the new one, and it seemed a lot stronger in signal strength.
Yep.
What's the makeup of it? Is it a box? Is it another spacesuit?
Well, we got a picture of it the way you had it set up in Dayton, right? You have a picture of the way it was set up at Dayton, which is kind of an early mock-up, I think. Number 3. Yeah,
we're looking for it.
Was the helmet. So what we want to do,
there you go.
This is SUITSAT 2. As we were working on it, we were going to use another suit. And to make a long story short, in 2009, we lost that suit. Not that it went missing or anything, but what had happened is
we had it here somewhere.
Yeah. Where is that doggone suit? The International Space Station back at that time, they increased the number of their occupants to 6. So the astronauts and cosmonauts. So there wasn't, all right, so get this. There's not enough space on
for
the International Space Station. So they had to make room.
Did they throw it out, or did they send it down in a Progress, or how do they get rid of it?
Yeah, they probably, the Progress is, of course, the UPS truck, the brown truck that goes up to the International Space Station and takes the supplies. And what they do is when they empty the Progress, then they fill it back up with trash. And then when it's time for the next Progress to come up, they detach it, and then it comes down to the Earth atmosphere and burns up. So they basically incinerate their trash, and they use the used Progress as the Dempsey dumpster.
So you had to go to Plan B.
Yeah, Plan B. So Plan B, let's see here. What's a good picture for Plan B? Why don't you go to number 5? And here's an artist's conception of SUITSAT. Now, what you see on the top left there's that control panel that you probably saw on SUITSAT-1, and inside this box are basically the parts and pieces that would have went inside the suit. So we ended up making a space frame. Here it is. And notice it has solar panels. So we have 6 solar panels in all, so you can count them. There's 4 on each side, 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom. And these were solar panels that were donated to us from NASA. So these are space-rated solar panels. This pretty much dictated the size. And so now you're taking a look at that picture. What do you think the size is? How big do you think that is?
Oh, that looks like, I'm going to guess, maybe that's about 8 inches by 8 inches by 3 inches.
And you'd be wrong, Leo.
Oh, Leo.
Not for the first
time. Any other guesses?
It's the size of a small home. I don't know. What is it?
Bring up number 8. Okay, bring up slide 8.
Yeah,
And this might give you a little perspective.
Oh, it's a little bigger than that.
Wow.
Yeah. Look at the size of those handles. Wow.
Can you tell the listeners what frequency to tune in so everybody can go outside and listen to it?
Because Gordo's already heard this.
I know.
That's so cool.
Frequency.
All right, so bring up slide 19.
Slide number 19.
19.
Oh,
wow. Probably the easiest is on that top right end where it says FM, says 145.95. That's the easiest one. That is the FM channel where you'll hear the greetings from space, the voice telemetry.
Now, I could do that on my handy-talkie.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Really?
Yep. So what you'll want to do, Leo, and for everybody out there listening, to get your handheld, and it does, like Gordo said, we were much more successful this time. The antennas are working great. The transmitter's working great. And literally with an HT, with a rubber duck antenna, you can go outside and listen to ARISSat at 145.95. So bring up, I don't know, can we bring up the AMSAT.org website?
Yeah, this is where you'll find out when it's going to be passing overhead.
I have it right
Remember,
now,
about
I believe,
a 3 to 5 minute window, so you got to listen quick.
So this is SUITSAT-1. Where is SUITSAT-2 on here?
Well, go to Launchpad. Now, on the top,
there it is.
On the top where it'll say passes. Notice it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the left.
I see
Click
passes.
And it won't be SUITSAT-2. It's ARISSat-1.
It'll be ARISSat. Yeah,
ARISSat-1.
That it got renamed. Now, what you need to do is find out what your latitude and longitude are, and fill that into the altitude there. Go ahead and hit predict. All right, so this is a and what this will do is print out a table. Yeah, it probably won't let you.
I need give me a grid square. I need a grid square.
We'll find out for me.
Charlie Mike
FM05.
FM05, you want to do that?
Yeah, that'll be for North Carolina.
There you go.
We'll see if I need to run out in the rain here and go watch it.
There we go.
Yeah, see, what it'll do is it'll give you a table, and of course it's in Zulu time or Universal Coordinated Time, so you'll have to translate that for use. Now, Leo, click on the View Current Location of ARISSat there on the top.
That baby is here. Amateur Radio, International Space Station, SAT-1, and there it is.
You go. So
now, it looked like that had solar panels on it. Did it? Is that where you're getting your...
Yep. Well, the solar panels mean that it's operating now. Let's see. Tomorrow is Wednesday. It was launched August 3rd. So tomorrow is September
7th.
6th. Yep, September 7th.
Yeah.
So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. It's been operational 5 weeks now.
That's great. Now, I saw that battery life on was less than you thought. So, but it sounds like it's doing all right.
Yeah, what's happening is the battery has failed.
Oh, all right.
That failed 8 days into the mission. Well, there's a little story behind that, and it's kind of a long one, but I'll try to make it short. But it is it's a silver zinc battery. This is the same type of battery that's used on the Orlan spacesuit. So that's naturally the battery that we were given. Well, if you study that chemistry, there's one of two ways to build that chemistry. One is reliability, which is the way this battery was built for the suit. And the other is longevity, which it was not built for that. So this battery was only rated for 5 charges. So we thought if we did shallow charges on it, we'd be able to extend its life. Well, we find out now that it only lasted 8 days. So we need to regroup and think of another idea of what we can do for battery power for the next satellite.
But as long as you're in sun, you can operate.
Absolutely. And the panels are generating enough voltage and current to power the whole satellite. So what happens is if you're doing that past prediction that you saw on the AMSAT website and it's nighttime, chances are you're not going to hear the satellite. But if it's daytime, then it's powered up.
So you're looking for daytime. Yeah. You got it in the morning, right, Gordo?
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is when it comes out of eclipse, when it comes out of the dark into the day, there is a 16-minute safety timer. So what happens is once that voltage gets back up to where the system will start up, that safety timer, 16 minutes, 6 minutes, it'll be quiet. And the reason why that timer is there is that's what we designed it for the cosmonauts to be able to turn on the switches, have a 16-minute window of safety where the satellite is not transmitting, and they were able to get it pushed off. So what happens is every 90 minutes, ARISSat orbits the Earth, and as it comes out of eclipse, it takes 15 of those minutes to be able to go through the safety timeout, and then start transmitting.
So typically we're talking between 6 and 10 minutes of time that you could actually hear it for any given pass.
Yeah, and really if it passes right over your head, 10 minutes is probably the most prime time, but don't be discouraged. If it gets above your horizon by a couple of degrees, people are still hearing it. So if you have a 5-minute pass and it passes kind of shallow from horizon to horizon, chances are still very good you're going to hear it.
Great.
All right. Well, we'll send George up maybe to solder on. Well, no, we better keep George down here, huh, Leo?
Well, he's got a power supply.
He's not afraid to use it either.
May need a longer power cord, but we'll give it a try.
This is just, I think this is really a great example of kind of citizen science. I just love this idea of taking these old suits, or in this case, building something. How do you get that? How are you going to get that up? Do you just send it up on the Progress, or?
Yeah, it went up on the Progress at the end of January. In fact, we thought that they were going to deploy
picture number
it in
17
February.
Is of the launch. Picture 17.
Yeah, there's some good pictures there. There on the left, you see where they've packed it. Actually, the top right, they've basically wrapped it in a protective wrapping, and they're lowering it inside the capsule. The picture on the left shows it tucked in, nice and neat, inside the capsule there. And on the right is the Progress launch. So that went up January 28th, and we thought it would be deployed in February. They delayed it. See, the ARISSat, or SUITSAT, or even also it's known as RadioSCAF, which is the Russian way of saying of a satellite experiment, RadioSCAF, is technically it's a Russian experiment, the whole satellite. So we built this and then shipped it over to Russia, courtesy of NASA. Is all part of the educational program within NASA, and of course the educational mission that ARISS has. And then the Russians took it from there, putting it on the Progress. I learned a new term. It's called upmass.
And there's a lot of it, I bet, on the thing that big.
So it's, upmass. So you don't just send it up there or deliver it or mail it, you upmass it. So it was upmassed in January, sat there, and there's some pictures on the net you'll see where the cosmonauts have taken pictures of themselves with a satellite. And then come a Russian EVA, which was on August 3rd. Then this is where ARISSat was taken out, and there's some really good video. Now, the video that Gary's got, the problem with this launch, if you go to Launch 20, is this is the recording, this is the audio recording of the cosmonauts deploying the satellite, but the video wasn't there because the International Space Station was in between relay satellites, and we didn't have a video feed.
Yeah, you see a little bit of it, and you can hear them talking about pushing it out. This runs a minute or so. You can bring up the sound full for a second.
It looks like it's been broken.
This is Mission Control, Houston, as you can see from this.
Now, this is kind of curious. They're talking about
the ARISSat RadioSCAF educational satellite that we've been talking about since the beginning of today's activities. The crew is getting ready to attempt another deploy of this. And they are still discussing this second antenna that is in question.
Now,
the satellite will be deployed off the back end of the station. There's about a 30-degree cone that it will stay in as it drifts away.
this is the time that you have to jettison.
That is the
Get crazy here, but you need to work quickly. I just wanted to let you know that you have less than 3 minutes.
I just love the commitment.
The Space Station is quickly approaching sunset. They want the crew to get the satellite deployed before the sun goes down.
The commitment to education that this requires is very high-tech operation.
The deploy should take place within the next 2 minutes.
Absolutely.
They're about to push it out here. They're about to push it out.
You jettison it. I'm throwing. Yes, it's moving beautifully. Very nice.
That's so great.
You have to picture it going away beautifully.
I have some other video here. This is a video from the website also. I think it's coming out right there, isn't it? That's the satellite right in the middle there. Boy, that's amazing.
And it is. What had happened is earlier on in the EVA, the extravehicular activity, otherwise known as a spacewalk, see, they brought there you see they're bringing ARISSat out of the hatch.
Yeah.
This is the Piers docking module, which is basically the chamber that they do the depressurization so they can step outside. Here they're removing the protective wrapping. And then we're watching the video live, and I'll tell you what, them doing the EVA with the helmet cams was just phenomenal.
It's great to watch.
Yeah, you're seeing this firsthand. It's first person. You can see their hands. Now you can see why we made those handles so big.
Yep.
All right.
It doesn't weigh much, but they've got big old gloves on, and they need to hold on.
Yeah, on Earth it weighs a little over 50 pounds, but there you can see they can kind of toss it around pretty easy.
It's got some mass, of course.
Yeah, definitely. Now, one of the things that a lot of people saw that and saw, man, look how well they bumped it and bounced it around. Well, you know, that's our job. When we design it, we have to design it in such a way that, you know, it can take that kind of abuse. We have to think of these things and make it. So
it's part of the challenge. There it goes.
Well, it's not going to go. No. It's actually on a tether there, and for what it was is they discovered that the uplink antenna, the 70-centimeter uplink antenna, was missing. And we could see that in the helmet cam. And the cosmonauts thankfully saw it too. So we did think that they were going to basically bring ARISSat back in and launch it another year. In fact, the next time they were going to do an EVA was 2012.
Oh, jeez.
So really, what they did is, you see it there, it's actually on a tether. They left it there for a couple hours, and they went on about their business doing the EVA. And they were trying to figure out what to do. And so they were going back down to the ground control, and what they were doing is the previous expedition, they were going around asking them, so where's those antenna? Where was the antenna? And they said, well, it wasn't there. And I think the decision was made to go ahead and let it go, so that about almost 3 hours later, they went ahead and deployed it without that antenna. So we thought, okay, well, we've lost the ability to talk through the satellite, because that was just the uplink, and really, you know, the whole mission's not totally lost. But to our absolute amazement, hams around the world are able to communicate through ARISSat, through the transponder, with as little as 1 watt on the uplink. So, I mean, mission
sometimes things go your way.
That is just so
often
cool.
enough they don't, but sometimes they do.
Now, where does the funding come from for this, Steve?
They'll be hitting
I would
you
say,
up for it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, well, it was okay, here's another amazing thing, is that satellite was completely designed and assembled and put together by volunteers.
Wow.
I mean, from hams, that's probably not as great an amazement, but, you know, for the non-hams or maybe those that are not aware of amateur satellites, you know, it was all done by volunteers. So they volunteered their time, their workbenches. I mean, my workbench right over here soldered many of the components that are inside that are up there in space right now. But you still have to buy materials. You still have to fund airplane flights, hotel rooms, you know, for the engineers and the volunteers going back and forth as we were working on it, and the bulk of that came from AMSAT. So I'm going to put a plug in for AMSAT. If you go to AMSAT.org's website, there's a donate button there. So Barry Baines, president of AMSAT, has said that this cost AMSAT $180,000. So AMSAT is, of course, a membership supported organization through dues and donations. So if you really enjoy SuitSat, then highly encourage you to donate to AMSAT in any way you feel, whether as simple as just becoming a member or, you know, sending a donation their way.
Look at that. They launched that out. And do you think it'll just keep going as long as you've got sunlight? I guess you don't need the battery. How long do you think it'll stay in the service?
Well, that's what we're doing. Now we got a Chicken Little contest going to find out when it's going to come back into Earth and burn up. So when it was deployed from the space station through that cone of silence, a cone of safety, actually. Anyway, got to go all the way back to our Saturday Night Live.
I think that's Get Smart. I hate to tell you.
Oh, the cone of silence? I always remember as the Coneheads on
Coneheads, right. But Get Smart was the cone of silence.
Oh, I'm going to have to go back and watch my reruns.
I do believe you mean the cone of silence, Chief.
Oh, yeah. That's where you got it in that book. All right. What was the question I was asking?
How long it's going to last. So you're thinking the orbit does decay after a while, yeah?
It is decaying. It was deployed down, which is towards the Earth. And for those of you who have read Ender's Game, the enemy's gate is down.
Mm-hmm.
So it was purposely done that way so that, the satellite doesn't come back around and become a hazard to the International Space Station.
Got it. You don't want it in the same orbital plane as the ISS.
No, you don't. So it was purposely. They've done a lot of simulations as to where it needs to be pushed, and they pushed it off in that direction. So it is decaying. It is coming closer to Earth. In fact, you can download the orbital elements from various different websites and do the prediction yourself. You can just run your satellite programs. There's several available out there for purchase and some that are free. And just keep running it and fast forward and see when it's going to come back in. What I hope is that the electronics maintain themselves. What I would hope to see is that we start seeing the temperatures go up, and then to such a point that, of course, then temperatures get too high and it actually enters and burns up.
Right. This is really a wonderful project. AMSAT.org to know more about it, and I'm going to be pointing my handy talkie towards the sky tomorrow afternoon when it flies overhead. I already checked. And it's coming our way tomorrow afternoon, so we're gonna try and listen to this. So what do I expect to hear? Will I hear telemetry or?
What you're going to hear is, and this is kind of interesting for this satellite's probably not quite as a phenomenon as SUTSAT-1 was. SUTSAT-1, of course, was just the interest factor was just way up there. This one, however, we've got people from all over the world listening to and operating through the satellite. So this one is definitely one of the most operated satellites. And you want evidence of that? Go to YouTube and just search on ARISSat. And what people have done is when they've recorded their passes and put them on YouTube, there is literally, I hadn't even looked here lately, there's got to be at least 100 or more up there. But anyway, when you listen, you're going to hear this is ARISSat call, give its call sign, which is a Russian call sign. It is a Russian experiment. And you'll hear the spoken telemetry, and then you'll hear a pre-recorded greetings from space. There's 15 different languages recorded on there. And each of those languages, each one of the greetings gives a secret word. So as a contest, you can collect all the secret words and turn those in and get a certificate.
Oh, wow. There's even a game. That is so cool. When I first heard about the idea of talking to an amateur satellite, I was very jazzed, but now this is even more cool.
Okay, so now you want to be really jazzed.
Yeah.
So this is the 50th anniversary of Oscar-1. Okay, so Oscar-1's the very first satellite that amateurs put together and launched, and Oscar stands for Orbiting Satellite Carrying Amateur Radio, so it's an acronym. And Oscar-1 was launched in 1961, and it was done by Project Oscar, which is right there in California. So if you go back to the AMSAT...
Well, let me just play. This is somebody with a handy talkie aiming it. You see they have a little fox hunt directional antenna there, aiming it at the sky. And listen.
Battery voltage is
That's all you need.
5.90 volts. Battery current is -8.
That's the telemetry.
Right.
Coming back.
This is ARISSat-1.
And there's the call sign.
Satellite RS-01S.
That is so neat. That's Chinese.
So see if you can hear all 15 languages.
Well, I don't think we need to listen to all 15. I just wanted to play a little bit of that to give people an idea.
The challenge is for you to go outside and hear them, not
listen on YouTube.
You're not going to get a certificate. What I was going to say is, if you go to the AMSAT.org website, AMSAT is having their annual space symposium in San Jose early November, and Vince Ginner, I hope I got that name right. Let me look it up here real quick. Oh, Lance Ginner, K6GSJ, Kilowatt 6 Golf Sierra Juliet, is going to be the guest speaker. He's the one that worked on Oscar 1 and Oscar 2.
Neat.
Wow.
It's really a testament to the ham community, the volunteer spirit of the ham community, that they build satellites and they put them in space and you could talk to them. Just
Absolutely.
incredible. Just incredible.
Yeah.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to push things along too fast, but we have one more thing that we need to talk to Steve about, because he wears many hats, and one of them is something that's coming up in a couple of weeks in the Baltimore area. This is what I was talking about last week for the real blood and guts, high-tech hams, the stuff they talk about that, I don't understand and you won't understand unless you are really good. And Steve has corrected me about that, so we'll find out. But Steve, tell me what is coming up in a couple of weeks in Baltimore.
Okay, so we're switching gears here now, and those many hats, of course, I've been working with AMSAT for many years, but my other hat is I'm the president of TAPR, which stands for the Tucson Amateur Packet Radio, which is no longer really in Tucson and no longer really all about packet. It's more
kind of
about
like KFC. It's just initials now.
Yeah, it would just rather just say TAPR, and of course, like the ARRL, they also want to use just the letters and not really go much for the actual name, because it just kind of goes back many years to its origin. But really, what it is today is an organization that promotes the advancement of the radio art, and mostly in a digital fashion. And this is to say using digital techniques and digital modes. I mean, it's still, HF, but you're going to use digital modes, and you could even say that, CW and RTTY are digital modes. But TAPR has an annual conference that is the Digital Communications Conference. And it will be September 16th through 18th in Baltimore, Maryland. We're going to be at the BWI Sheridan, which is the Sheridan 4 Points Sheridan that happens to be at the BWI airport. So you don't even have to rent a car. You just basically land at BWI and walk over to the hotel. But for 3.5 days, we have technical talks, and we have a demo room. We have socials, we have banquets, and we have just a great time really getting down and dirty geeky. And what we do is we do a call for papers, we publish a proceedings, and we invite the speakers come and present their papers. And this is basically amateur radio experimentation. So this is the advancement of the radio art. And what's kind of cool is just listening to the ideas and the things that people are doing. And time again, the people that are in attendance listen to talks and come back the next year and write a paper and present a talk saying, hey, last year I heard this talk and it spurred this idea in me, and here's my work for the past year. So if you go back through the past, this will be the 30th annual, so for the past 29 years, there's been a series of proceedings and talks that have been given, and a lot of it on the bleeding edge of amateur radio. But to help Gary there saying that, this is for the real not faint at heart, I would say that what we've done also is on Saturday, we've created a series of introductory talks So we have introduction to digital modes, introduction to D-Star. So Leo, you would like that. Come on, listen to the introduction to D-Star. And then introduction to Digital HF by Mel Witten, who's Mr. Digital HF himself. And an introduction to APRS from basically the father of APRS, Bob Baringa. Wow. So we have, and also we also get asked an awful lot, can we broadcast online the DCC? And, we're kind of working on that. But let me just say that being there is just magical. You're able to rub shoulders and be able to see, meet, and talk with basically the movers and shakers of amateur radio right there in the room with you. So if you can, please attend. Of course, if you're local to the Baltimore area, it's easy for you to get there. If you're not, it'd probably be a little expensive jumping on an airplane at this point. But I mean, if you got a lot of frequent flyer miles, you might be able to grab it. But what we do is we rotate around the U.S. We go east, midwest, and we rotate around. For example, last year we were in the Portland, Oregon area. We were up in Vancouver, Washington, right across the river from Portland. And the year before that, we were in Chicago. And this year, we're going to be in Baltimore. In fact, we're working on Atlanta for 2012. So we move around, and we do that on purpose so that the local people can be able to basically get there easy, walk in, see what it's about, and they end up becoming part of the traveling roadshow because we got all kinds of people that fly in. So think of this as the TED Talks of amateur radio.
And there really are a lot of talks that are understandable at the Midland type ham level. My technology is not so great, but I enjoyed a lot of the talks, and a lot of them were at levels that I could understand. And you've got a banquet speaker on Saturday night, and that is typically not deep technology.
This one sounds really interesting. The Village Telco. I thought, boy, anybody who's a fan of technology would love to hear about how David Rowe is wiring up third world communities with free telephone service using Wi-Fi and mesh. And I mean, this just sounds so interesting.
Yeah, and I've heard David's talk, and David is coming to the DCC. He's probably going to get the most traveled award, but TAPR, basically, this is another thing that TAPR does, is when we find extraordinary people like this, we'll invite them and we'll pay their way to the DCC. So we funded his travel there so that everybody in the Baltimore area or whoever comes to DC gets the benefit of listening to David, because he's got some wonderful things that he's working on. In this Village Telco, he's created this little box and he calls it the Mesh Potato. And he's going to talk about how it's so easy to build one of these. And then the neat thing about his talk is it's also very social. I mean, you can certainly inject a lot of technology into a village, let's say. But what he's done is he's actually showing entrepreneurs how to set up a local telephone company.
Great.
And here's the equipment. And also, it's not that it would be put in there, it'd be free, but actually you'd put it in there and maintain it and actually charge so that, then a little bit of money goes back into the system and the entrepreneur there benefits. So this is very much a social aspect as well as a technical aspect.
Can't wait. Sounds fascinating.
Oh, yeah. Now,
Steve, we're losing you, but I think this is a good time, don't you think, Gary, to wrap up? And thanks, Steve, for what a fascinating topic.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah.
And so I will be at the DCC next weekend, 2 weeks, and I will be shooting video of it. And I shot video of it in 2009 and 2010, and have the whole thing on 6 DVD sets each year. They did it themselves out in Seattle. It's too far for me to go last year, but they've got DVDs on their website. So you can look over at my website and their website. the DVDs that are available and pick by topic, because each of the 6 DVDs has a few of the presentations on it, and you can look at the topics you might be interested in and get a feel for it. But Steve is right. If you can go, the live interaction with these people is what's really good. You can ask questions, and between the sessions, at lunch, at dinner, talk to people that you've only read their articles in the trade magazines, and really learn something and get answers to your questions. So it's worth going to.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for your time. You know, the chat
glad
room,
to do it.
It's great to talk